Our lesson today is entitled Proclaiming Christ. It comes from the book of Philippians chapter 1, verses 15 through 26. Interesting story is told about the sculptor Michelangelo and the famous painter Raphael. As they were working together on the various paintings that they were doing for the Vatican, a bitter rivalry developed between the two. So much so that as they came to the Vatican to do the work, they never spoke to each other. But yet both of them believed that they were doing what they were doing for the will of God, to give God glory. It's interesting, isn't it? Because it begs the question, why do we do what we do for the Lord? Is there a potential that we become jealous or anxious as God blesses someone else with some particular gift? Paul gives us the understanding today as he opens our lesson in verses 15 through 18 with a new effort. Paul is in jail, he's been arrested, but he has not allowed his arrest to stop his articulation of the goodness and the glory of God as it relates to the gospel of Jesus Christ. Because Paul kept preaching, two groups began to develop: those who were already preachers who just became strengthened in their ministry, and those who were non-preachers who accepted the calling to preach. But the distinction is that those who were gifted and believed that God had called them to really minister had such a love of God and such a love of people, as opposed to those who just started preaching but was doing it zealously, with strife, with envy, with anger, with selfish ambition and impure motives. Paul says, I'm glad that the gospel of Jesus Christ is not diminished because of people's motives. It is so powerful that it yet saves. Our lesson concludes today then in verses 19 through 26 with certain victory. Paul even quotes the Old Testament book of Job, chapter 13, verse 16, as he begins to talk about how, in fact, for him to live is Christ and to die is gain. Paul realized that his life was central to Jesus Christ. In other words, for him to live every day meant that he was living out the purpose that God had for his life and that Christ saved him for. Even Paul recognized, even though death was pending, Paul was not worried about it, because he recognized that in his death, he then would go and be with the Lord. I want to ask the question today as we think about this lesson: what does it mean for you to work for the Lord? And then what does it mean for you to live for the Lord?